One. Hello, everyone. I am here. You know me, Andy Nowicki, and I'm here with Default Friend. And first of all, thank you for stopping by to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out.
And of course, you came to my attention from being on Nama Cates's Incel podcast, and I was intrigued by the conversation that y'all had there, and thought I would reach out and see. I should also say I explored your Substack, which I'm still kind of, I'm old, so I'm still kind of learning these newfangled things that are on the internet these days, and I only had this. I still don't really have that much of a grasp of exactly what Substack is, but I guess it's sort of like a blog, more or less. Can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's designed to be a newsletter, but I think a lot of people just use it as a blog. I use it as a blog.
Mm-hmm.
I think like when you're sending out a newsletter, you probably have, you want to send it out at like a certain schedule, and it's going to be like typically the same format or the same couple of formats. But I mean, I think I really use my Substack as though it was a Tumblr. Like I just images, random creative writing, lists of thoughts I have. It's very chaotic.
It's interesting, and I'll leave a link to it so that those who aren't acquainted can maybe get acquainted with your Substack blog. But first question. I'm sorry if this is a tedious question for you, but I'm intrigued by your handle. Can you explain it? Where did you get it from? What does it mean?
Yeah. So it's like there's two parts of this story. The first part is I guess like most incels. Not that I'm an incel, but something I have in common with the incel community is I have a little bit of like a chip on my shoulder that I've been like working very hard to like disabuse myself of. But because of that, I always use the word friend in sort of like a snarky way.
Like in quotes?
My handle. Well, yeah. So it's like, I think when I was making this account, I had like a couple of ideas for names, and it was like a bunch of different plays on the word friend in different languages, and then like second best was sort of like another idea I had, but I couldn't figure out a good pun for it. So like default friend is like, the friend you call when like no one else is available, which is sort of like this. When I was in high school, this is how this whole thing came about. When I was in high school, I was like the secret friend of this like very popular girl.
Oh, no.
And like we've been like openly best friends in middle school, and
right.
Sort of like as she like lost weight and became a little bit cooler, like I was like a little bit too autistic and weird for her.
So she had to keep you on the down low. She still wanted to be your friend, but she had to ignore you in public. Is that basically?
Kind of. I think she just like didn't want to burn the bridge, honestly, and she didn't like we had said there was just too much history to just like full on ghost.
Right.
So it was like she would do like a courtesy lunch with me every now and then. But like I wasn't invited to her birthday party. I mean, there was just like weird shit like that. And I mean, like, yeah. I don't think she was a bad person necessarily, because like to be fair to her, like
she was a teenager. She was still learning. Still learning.
She was like sporty and charismatic and stuff, and I was just kind of like always on the internet, and like I don't know, like I would. Like she would tell me about like boys she was going on dates with, and I would tell her about like strangers on forums I was getting into fights with, and I was kind of frumpy. I mean, I'm still kind of frumpy, right? It was just like I needed to find my like weeaboo friends or whatever, and she was living her best sort of like fun tennis girl life. So that's sort of the like original kind of like thrust for the name, and then the second part is. I really like embraced it as sort of like a persona when I was moving to the Bay Area, and it kind of changed definitions. I moved to the Bay with like, I want to say, I mean, I knew some people there because my dad had lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a little bit, and I had some family there. But I moved with like one like close friend, and his gripe about San Francisco was that, you know, he loved it. He loved the energy of the tech scene, but it was like very boring, and he like really struggled to make friends. And he was like, you know, I have friends, but they're all like women I went on first dates with, and like they didn't turn into anything. And you know, and like every now and then I'll get a drink with a coworker, but I don't like have a group of friends here. And I couldn't believe it because, you know, the San Francisco Bay Area is San Francisco, Berkeley, Palo Alto, San Jose, Oakland. I mean, and that's, you know, that's just a few of the cities that encompass this geography. And it's like, there's no way. There's just like no way that like this place is like boring and friendless. Like it's you would think as an outsider that it'd be an excellent place to meet people. So I leaned into this like default friend moniker, and I had a newsletter, which was just like events listings to sort of like prove to him, but also like prove to, you know, whoever else is interested that there's always a lot going on if you pay attention. And then also like the idea was like through this newsletter, people were supposed to like make friends, and I was, you know, open to attending any event with any person, like, you know, basic safety check, but as long as it was like within reason, I'd be happy to go to any like play or like weird talk on meditation or like cool restaurant or whatever. And I ended up meeting like a lot of people this way, and I was like, not like a little bit less than like regionally famous, like, you know, a lot of like everyone within, you know, a handful of particular subcultures knew who I was. But I, you know, I really thought like, oh, maybe like there's something I could, you know, some community building thing I could do with this. And then COVID happened, and, you know, meeting strangers and going to like wacky restaurants and like weird art exhibitions, and living in California at all like quickly became unsustainable.
Yeah,
so that is that's the two-pronged origin story of Default Friend, and perhaps says, you know, everything you need to know about me.
That's interesting. Are you back from the Bay? Are you still trying to make it out there?
No, I moved. My boyfriend was pursuing his PhD there, and once he got it, we headed out, and now I live in the Midwest.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to live in California right now. Just with everything that's going on there. I mean, with Governor Newsom, and not to get political or anything, but with it seems like one of the more like oppressive, restrictive, just nutty, off the wall kind of places. I know there's still nice things out there and nice people and you know, cultural landmarks and stuff, but I just, you know, I can understand moving to the Midwest personally, considering where I understand California to be right now. Now, am I being overly negative in my assessment?
I mean, I don't know. You know, another close friend of mine just visited, and he came back like basically a different person, and, you know, like fully convinced he wanted to move back there. He was a friend that I had met when I lived in California. But I mean, I personally, like, it's very expensive.
Expensive too.
San Francisco, the culture is very dysfunctional. And it's one of the rare cases where I don't think it's sort of like a media invention when you hear about San Francisco or the San Francisco Bay Area. Like, it is as bad. It's actually, frankly, like a lot worse than people know. Maybe not in the precise ways you would expect, but it's just like
junkies everywhere, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there's like, it's like purgatory in a lot of ways. Like, there's, you know, flies constantly, and it can be because a homeless person died, or like someone just like shit in the street. But there's also things like the culture around wealth, I find, is like very dysfunctional. like here's a crazy story that like could only happen in the Bay Area. You know, I don't make a lot of money, but I make I make a comfortable amount. I'm like very comfortably middle class. And I would confide in a female friend of mine that I was, not like jealous per se, but I guess like kind of sorrowful that I would never be the type of person who made millions of dollars like many of my peers, who either were founders of companies or, for whatever reason had come into that kind of money, and how like I felt like left out somehow. And you can't help but feel like left out in that kind of in that situation if everyone you know is like being a decamillionaire isn't so far out. And this is already like the premise of this is already like totally dysfunctional. I mean, like I'm fine. I have great health insurance. Like it was insane for me to be insecure about my income, even in California. And I don't have any children right now, so it's like totally okay. And she would listen to me, and eventually we get into this argument, and it comes out that she was like, well, I'm like offended that you would say such a thing because like, I have it so hard, and I don't think you're taking into account like where I'm coming from. And I mean, this is a woman who was making like, I don't think she realized this, but she made quite a bit more than I did. She made like almost $100,000 a year, and her own self-perception was that she was poor.
How did she have it hard in her own mind?
I think maybe because she has like student loans or something. But she has a very prestigious job. She makes good money. If she lived in a mid-sized city, it would be right at the top. But I mean, it was frustrating to me because I was like, it feels weird to me that someone working at one of the most prestigious companies in the country could possibly say something like that. But it's a symptom of the they. Mm-hmm. And it's like she was right to call me out. It's just that she didn't realize that we're 2 points on the same spectrum of just like being totally out of touch. So mm-hmm. it was like a really weird moment, and I feel like the Bay, among many other things, like really encourages that kind of like lack of gratitude. Like
absence of empathy.
Yeah, but I mean also like we're two women who like have no, like especially in this climate, we have no right to complain or feel left out or like look at our lives with anything other than like extreme gratitude. And like like of course it can be kind of boring working like an email job, whatever, but like we're like we have great health insurance. That alone we should be like very, very thankful.
Now a lot of what you write about is the current dating scene. It seems that's is it fair to say that's a preoccupation or a major theme in your writing and what you focus on?
Sort of. I mean, I think I used to write about it a lot more, especially when I was getting like commissions from publications, which is like increasingly less common these days. But I think I write about just relationships and how people relate to one another in the digital world. And so dating is sort of the one place where people like really they have a lot of questions and a lot of hunger to hear answers, even if it's the same answer over and over again.
Now, something I heard you say on Nama's show, and that I had to follow up on because she didn't follow up on it, or she didn't ask any questions about it, but it perked up my ears because when I heard you say, and let me just make sure I understood what you said correctly in context and all of that, but you said something like before social media, before dating, online dating sites or a thing, you said you remembered a time where things were basically somewhat reversed as far as male-female dynamics, that it was like the average-looking female who just went ignored, and you said something like it was like a nerds are sexy kind of time period, and so So at this point, you said men actually had the advantage, or it was like if you were, an okay looking guy with an okay looking job, you would just get tons of attention from women. But if it was reversed, you would just sort of, and you were a woman, uh, unless you were in the top 20% or whatever, you would just go ignored. It seemed like that you were saying something like that was the was the way things were not long ago, and I'm not remembering when things were like that. So I was just curious to hear your take on that, and maybe clarifying what you meant by that.
Yeah, so I mean, I stand by that. However, let me like caveat it a little bit. It's more true in certain cities than others, but I think it's especially true within certain age brackets.
Mm-hmm.
I think like dating apps and like social media in particular have really disturbed is sort of like this like young adult age bracket. Like for example, high school boys have the highest standards of anyone alive, right? And like in high school, if you're like if you're like a little bit fat or something,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a woman, you're fucked, frankly. I mean, like it's just the standards of high school boys are brutal, and those same standards in some environments persist into college.
Mm-hmm.
But with dating apps, it removed that that power balance.
Uh-huh.
Because like men became, sort of more disposable. It was easier to connect. I would say it was probably like less true for older people. But I still do remember a time when like, unless you were willing to like really relax your standards, and by relax I mean like not just like dating someone with like a job that's like not so great or something, but like really like low, like bottom of the barrel low standards.
Uh-huh.
You would struggle a lot, and I'm talking about like truly average women. I'm not talking about women who are like, uh, like I'm talking about women who are like kind of fat, who like
Right.
maybe have like jacked teeth or something, or who just like don't fall into like conventional standards of beauty. And I think it's like really underappreciated how difficult it used to be. I believe that it's changed. I don't have a lot of experience with dating apps, but I'm willing to based on like all the like testimonies from women I've heard about like going on like hundreds of first dates and being able to just like dispose of men.
Yeah.
And the clear like growing incel problem. Clearly, there's been some kind of shift, but I think like I think we don't appreciate how difficult it was for ugly and average women before that point. I don't know like what kind of proof I could give beyond like there's media representations of this. There's people's personal experiences. It's certainly more true in a place like New York City or Los Angeles than it might be in a Columbus, Ohio. I'll give you that.
Right.
But I like where do spinsters come from if not those lifted standards?
But do you think that? I mean, I understand what you say about high school boys and having standards, or like just fantasizing about beautiful women all the time, and if someone's, I hate to rate people by numbers. I think that's so ridiculous. But just for the sake of our conversation, like. I could see being a high school boy who maybe ignores a 4 or a 5, to and all of his attention is taken away by the cheerleaders who are 8s or 9s or whatever. But the thing is, like for average and ugly boys, they weren't they may have had higher standards, but they weren't. I don't think they were. I don't think they were succeeding at at getting anyone, were they? Unless
Well, it creates the illusion of power within the economy of like other
yeah,
other girls who are like in the 1 to 5 range, right? Like
yeah,
using my own experiences is probably a dead end, but let's say like I have a friend who shared a story on a podcast we were both on recently. We went to high school together, and there was this guy he was an average looking guy, but he was like 5'1", and he had like asked her out on a date as a joke just to humiliate her. And now this guy wasn't necessarily dating anyone else, but even that he was in the position to like sort of humiliate an average looking girl, like it's something that like I think we've like forgotten about. Like, so even if he couldn't date anyone else, it creates this like illusion where like he would only date the 7, 8, or 9, right?
So okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying about. I sort of get it, but here's the thing. Here's what, like, before there was online dating, there were just to take a crude example, like people just hung out at places. Like, if you wanted to meet people, you would let's just say go to a bar or something. Don't you think that an average looking woman at a bar would still get more attention from the opposite sex than an average looking man at a bar?
Depends on which bar. Seriously, I think
well, the
bar,
standard bar, just the mean.
No, I mean it depends on which city too. So I mean, the other thing I have to caveat with is I grew up in Palm Beach County, and then I lived in New York City, and I spent like another good chunk of my adulthood in California. So my perspective is also very colored by a certain type of person.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gone out or dated in like a mid-sized city where there's more like gender parity, in terms of like there's roughly the same number of men as there are women,
right?
So on and so forth. So I also like perhaps have a bias in that way.
Sure,
yeah,
but
so I mean, there's definitely that. So I would say perhaps in like in a place like like Austin or Columbus or even Chicago where I am now, but in a place like New York or LA, definitely not. And I try to disclaim that that's sort of my perspective when I talk about these things, because I know that's like a very specific worldview.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I'm very like bias laden.
Oh no, it's all right. I just had to sort of follow up on that one, because it didn't like my whole take on relations between the sexes is just with the way things are right now. I do think things are in a really bad state right now. But my thing would be that if you were a woman